Dear colleague, welcome to the second part on how to write your first scientific paper, which will be of a more practical nature. As we discussed in the previous lecture, you start by reading and you mainly find new references from PubMed and then from the papers you read. Often we never take the time to learn how to use the tools that are at our disposal. As soon as we have a basic understanding, we try to use them as best as we can, and then continue to use them in a suboptimal way for the rest of our career. If I was to start my career now, with what I know today, then I would spend a few hours first learning how to use the tools. And concerning PubMed, you will find many short and long lectures at your disposal on their webpage. But it ain't brain surgery, so you can of course just jump right into it. Fill in the search terms you believe to be suitable and then refine your search, making it more narrow or wider. Often it is a good start to use a wider search and then narrowing it down. You can search on a condition or a procedure or any term of relevance. And the more terms you combine, the more specific your search will be. And if you know which paper you are searching for, then you can use the name, year, or a part of the title. If a title looks promising, then click on it and have a look at the abstract. If you want the paper, then many papers are open access and can be accessed through PubMed or the publisher. You will find a link in PubMed. And you will find or be able to order references through your university library, and often you can find a non-open access paper for free by just Googling it. Many authors will upload their papers to ResearchGate and similar websites. There are many advanced ways and tools to store and keep your papers in order, including EndNote, but at least create one or several dedicated folders and name each paper according to first author, year and topic. If not, chaos will soon reign among your papers. If you are only going to write one short paper in your life, then you can manage your references manually in the old manner. However, if you have further ambitions, then you should immediately get a reference managing program. I suggest that you get EndNote, which is probably the most commonly used among researchers. However, there are other programs as well, including free ones such as Zotero. And the situation is the same as with PubMed. There are many lectures at your disposal, and I suggest that you use them. There are many journals out there. Some are prestigious with a high impact factor and others less so. For your first publications, don't aim too high, but at least make sure that you can find a journal on PubMed, and select a journal not based on its impact, but on how well your topic suits the journal and its readers. All these journals differ, and you will find detailed information about how you should write your manuscript on the web pages in author guidelines or instructions for authors. If you already know to which journal you will submit your paper, then you can look at these instructions immediately and shape the manuscript accordingly. However, more common is probably to first write the manuscript and once it's finished, to adapt it to the chosen journal. When people start writing their first manuscript, it often gets messy and chaotic. For that reason, I suggest that you try to keep order already from the start. If you know where you will submit the manuscript, then you can follow the author guidelines. If not, you can follow my suggestions. Use Times New Roman size 12. No extra space between the lines. Do not use any settings that will adapt the distance between the letters in order to make the lines of a more equal size. For headings, use capital bold, subheadings bold, and sub-subheadings italics. Use EndNote from the beginning and choose the style numbered. And place tables and figures at the end of the manuscript. Do not incorporate them in the text. How you structure a manuscript will differ depending on the type of manuscript, and you can find more information about this in the journal's information to authors. But I will here assume that you are writing a research paper. A typical manuscript will consist of a first page, an abstract, introduction, material and methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. I suggest that you do not try to write it from the beginning, and that you don't write a little bit here and there. Write instead each section in the above order and try to make it decent before getting on to the next section. In the end, when sections 1 to 6 are all done, then you can go through the whole manuscript and optimize it as one unit before writing the abstract. It is now time to start writing, so create a Word file, and considering later correspondence and multiple versions, I suggest that you name it with title, date and your initials. Then write the first page with authors, author's affiliation, address for correspondence, keywords, and of course with the title of the paper. Keep the title as short as possible, while still making sure that it is providing an adequate description of the content of your paper. Remember that there are about 14,000 scientific papers being published each day, and the risk that your paper will pass the intended reader by will increase if they don't bother to read the title or do not understand that this is what they are looking for. It is then time to continue with material and methods, where you present your material, what you have done and how you have done it. Use subheadings such as surgical technique, evaluation, statistics, etc. when indicated. And instead of describing the patients in detail in the text, it is often better to provide a table. In the material and method, as well as in the following parts, it is often valuable to learn by imitation. Of the papers that you have read, choose the 3 to 5 best ones that are most similar to your own paper and put these in front of you. Look how they have structured this section and follow their example. Look also at the words and expressions that they are using and try to adapt to their style. You can of course not plagiarize, but you can borrow a word from one paper and an expression from a second paper. If you are not providing something that they are providing, ask yourself why and consider adapting to their example. Let's say that you are writing a clinical paper on stereotactic surgery for essential tremor, and you decided not to include such details as duration of disease or gender. Well, that might be perfectly fine, but if the other papers have reported these details, then at least give it a second thought. Likewise, if you are providing something they are not providing, such as the weight and height of the patients, ask yourself why and consider if your choice is better or not. Look also at the length of each section in their papers. Yours should probably not be shorter than the shortest or longer than the longest. Let's say that your section on statistics fills a complete page, while none of the papers in front of you have deemed it to merit more than a few sentences. Well, perhaps your manuscript needs a detailed explanation of the statistics, but at least have a second look at this. Then continue with the results of your study, but be careful not to mix up material and results, and never discuss the results in results. Discussions are for the discussion. In this section, do not use more words than is necessary and use tables and images instead of words when possible. Figures and tables are supposed to make the manuscript easier to understand, so keep them as simple as possible and make sure that the accompanying text is sufficient for the interpretation. In the discussion, you discuss your results. Identify first what is the most interesting findings. You do not have space to discuss everything, so you should focus on what is most important. Often a discussion consists of 2 sections. One in which you discuss the topic in general based on the literature, and one in which you discuss your own findings. Here I provide 2 schematic ways on how to structure a discussion, and it might be good to follow either of these until you have written a couple of papers. In the first version, start with a very short summary of the most important of your results. Interpret and discuss these findings and their possible implications. Discuss also weaknesses with your study if this is indicated. Then review the literature on this topic. If your results are not that interesting, your paper might still be accepted for publication if the reviewers learn something in general, and the best way of achieving this is with a thorough but concise review. In the second version, start with a general introduction to the area in order to give a background to your study. then review the literature on this topic, and add a very short summary of your most important results. And finally, interpret and discuss these findings and their possible implications, and discuss weaknesses with your study if this is indicated. When it is time to conclude your paper, focus on the most important findings. The fewer the better, and the shorter the better. After you have finished the discussion and concluded your paper, it will be easier for you to see what you should put into the introduction. The introduction should be kept rather short and concise. Give a short background to the present study, explain why it was important to do this study, possible gap of knowledge, and what were the aims of the study. Often a reviewer or a reader will decide within a minute if he likes the paper or not. The introduction is therefore very important and should catch the interest of the reader. You should have created the individual parts with consideration to each other, but it is now time to go through the whole manuscript and ensure that you have a good flow in the text and that you are consequent regarding abbreviations, terminology, etc. Before finalizing the last details of the manuscript, you need to decide which journal to submit it to and to consult the instructions for authors. Read this very carefully and make sure that you are adhering to every single detail. You will need to adapt the manuscript according to the specific rules of the journal. This might include various alterations, but most importantly, you should now create abstract, reference list in the proper style, and acknowledgement and disclosures. The abstract will almost write itself when you have written the rest of the paper, so save this to last. But even if you can mainly copy and paste, you should put in some effort. You will catch a few potential readers with your title, but if your abstract does not appeal to them, they will not continue to the paper itself. So make sure that your abstract is well written, not longer than necessary, and focus on the results and conclusions. A typical abstract will be around 200-250 words and might contain subheadings such as background, aim, methods, results, discussion, and conclusions. However, there are considerable differences between journals regarding the length and structure of the abstract, so you need to consult the journal's instructions for authors. Concerning references, there are numerous different styles, and these differ between different journals and also between papers, books, and book chapters. While writing the draft of the manuscript, you can choose any style you want in EndNote, such as numbered. When you are preparing the manuscript for submission, you will consult the instructions for authors of that journal as well as a paper from that journal. You convert the style to the style of the journal. If you can't find the style in EndNote, try to download it from EndNote's homepage. If you can't find it there, then you will have to construct it yourself. Information on how to do these things is available in the tutorials on the EndNote homepage. Acknowledgements and disclosures vary between different journals, so follow the instructions for authors. In general, acknowledge or disclose funding, financial interest, and contributions by persons not included among the authors. Then you write a cover letter according to the instructions, and if possible, add a very short presentation of the rationale of your paper and how it fills a gap of knowledge. And with that, you have now submitted your first research paper and started your scientific career. And remember that you will find 250 more lectures at the Stereotactic Academy at stereotactic.org, including the last part of this lecture. Thank you for your attention.